Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Don from the Defion Productions podcast, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin. And this is Thursday morning, 2 days after the presidential election, where we finally have the results. We finally have the direction that this country decided to go in. And we finally have a lot of action in our markets. Most specifically, because this podcast is a Bitcoin podcast, we'll talk about Bitcoin specifically. We had an extreme run-up election night, which was pretty wild to watch. We started out election day, Tuesday morning, in the neighborhood of probably 68,000, I want to say. And by middle of the night, middle of the evening, let's say 7 o'clock, as the results started to come in, we started to see the price move. We approached 73 probably around that time. And then when it started to become pretty clear that Trump was going to take over, we blasted past the old all-time high, which, depending on what exchange you look at, was about 73.5, 73.7, hit 74. And then when I believe Fox News called it first, I think even MSNBC called it before CNN. But when the first call was made that Trump was going to be the winner, Bitcoin touched 75K. And then literally I had caught it because I was looking at the app, and it dropped about 800 right down to like 74.2 right after that. And then stayed around the 74 to 75 range that night. And then yesterday we saw 76. And as we sit currently right now at 11:04 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we got $76,009.33 on the Bitcoin price. ETH has been moving as well. ETH is about 28.43 currently. Solana, which is Troy's favorite coin, 192.33. BNB 598.84. If we take a look at let's take a look at it's 24-hour volume of the top coins. You got Bitcoin up around 2.08%, ETH 7.7%, Solana 3.5, BNB 2.5, XRP 3.5, ADA 9.8. Yesterday, we saw the stock market have one of its biggest days in years. The Dow was up about 1,500 points. Its first 1,000+ point day since November of 2022, so over 2 years. All the equities were up at least 2.5%, some 3%. The Dow obviously leading. Let me jump on equities real quick and give us an up to date on the equities, because I haven't actually checked that yet this morning. Let's see. What's kind of funny, too, while we're talking about it, Jim Cramer, I don't know if you saw this. Jim Cramer made the call earlier in Tuesday that Harris was going to win, and it's always the inverse Cramer trade. So whatever Cramer trades, usually the opposite is going to happen. And he said Harris is going to win, and everybody's like, oh, it's a lock. Trump's going to win. So that was kind of funny. So it looks like equity markets currently, the Dow is roughly flat, down 0.05%. The NASDAQ is moving again, up 1.1%, and the S&P's up 0.54%. So it looks like, at least in the short term, that a Trump presidency is definitely going to be good for markets broadly. He's made a lot of promises to the Bitcoin community, so I'm not very surprised that we see Bitcoin moving the way that it's moving, crypto markets moving the way that they're moving. It's basically a lock at this point, I would say, at least if he keeps his word, and all the people that support him, that Gary Gensler will not be the SEC chair come early next year when Trump takes office. I'm not sure who he would pick for that position. There's a lot of people circling Trump's orbit that I'm kind of interested to see. The obvious, Robert F. Kennedy is going to be the health czar, whatever position that is. He'll be associated with healthcare and working on that. The other thing too, like for me, because I'm a JFK nut, and being that RFK is probably going to be in his cabinet, I put the probability of us finally getting to see the last of the JFK files fairly high. I think that might actually happen. I think probably part of the negotiations when RFK decided was like, if you win, those got to get released. We got to see that. So I think if he doesn't do it and have an RFK by his side, that'll cause a lot of friction. And he said he was going to do it, so I think that's just more pushing him in the direction to actually release the last of the JFK files, and we can kind of maybe put that to bed, or at least make the best inferences that we can based on whatever those files say that they haven't wanted to tell us for 70 years or 60 years, whatever it's been. What do you think about that, Rich?
Hold on, let me switch over to my thing. Oops, wrong one. It'd be interesting. I think those files are gone. I think
You think the CIA burned them?
I think they're gone.
You do?
They're in a box in somebody's basement that's long dead. You know, like the funny thing about it is at this point, like we all kind of know what it was. Like if anybody thinks that it was a guy I think he fired the shot, but I think it was a setup. I think there's so many other things when you look at like what happened to, you know, like what happened after he did the assassination and the guy who killed him, and there's, you know, Ruby and all those things. Like there's just so much. Like it's almost I'm hoping RFK just Jr., if he gets a position, that he releases the alien file. That's the one I want. I want the ones about the aliens, whether they exist or not. So, well, I think the RFK. I think anything related to JFK has probably been destroyed, burned. I don't think it's sitting around in a dusty box somewhere. Somebody made sure that stuff went away.
I think the trust level for the CIA is probably at an all-time low, so I wouldn't be surprised if something...
Shocking that we can't trust the CIA.
Yeah.
Just shocking.
It's pretty crazy for me, because, I mean, 20 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe 25 years ago,
Right.
Who would have thought that we would have ever said, like pre-9/11 at least, who would ever thought that we would have said that we don't trust the CIA, the FBI, or any of these government organizations? And today, who trusts them at this point? You know what I mean? So it's kind of wild. Looking at the, I believe that not every single state has been called yet as of this morning. Maybe they have as of us filming now. But when I looked early this morning, I don't think every single state was called. But I'm looking on Twitter at a electoral map, and it looks like as of this post that I seen, which was at 9:58 a.m., Trump 312 electoral votes, and Harris 226 electoral votes. Trump looks like one Nevada, one Arizona, one Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. It looks like he had a clean sweep.
I think he had a clean sweep of, at least he's going to, even if it's not
swing
official
states.
yet. Yeah. And that's really when it comes down. But, you know, the thing that I'll say is that if you look at all the states, if you look at New York, if you look at New Jersey, you know, they're the worst for Democrats. That's their worst performances in those states. If you look at, I mean, I follow this stuff. I was watching the big board and all those things, and they break down counties, and it's, you know, they're going to take years to determine. I have my own opinions of why, what and where and how, but ultimately, mathematically, she did not do as well in many counties, areas that everybody thought that she was going to do better. And it's not like Trump's numbers went up per se, because I think when it's all said and done, he'll win the popular vote, which is always the big thing. Well, he didn't win the popular vote.
It'll be the first Republican since Bush in 2004.
Yeah. And but his numbers are actually lower. Like less people will have voted for him, I think. But so many less people voted for her. I think this is the lowest turnout for the Democratic candidate, I think since Hillary. I actually think it's going to be lower than Hillary.
The other thing I want to talk about real quick, I was actually texting with my brother as I was driving in here about this. I'm seeing something going around Twitter, which I want to talk about because I want to debunk it, because I think it's lacking a lot of context. But there's a chart that's showing 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024 in regards to all of the votes. And if you look, 12, 16, and 24 for the Democrats is almost identical in regards to what they were counted as of whenever this information was gathered. And 2020 was, it looks like from this chart, I'm gathering it was around 66 or 67 on average million people vote for the Democrats. And in 2020, it was 83 million. So it was significantly higher.
Yeah.
Significantly higher than the average. To be fair, it looks like in 12, there was about 61 million, 16, 63 million, 2020, 74 million. And then for this election, looks like the Republicans get about 71 million as of this. So it's down on both sides
right.
for this election. And I think, and people are posting this and retweeting it to kind of prove the idea that the 2020 election was stolen and that it was rigged and stuff like that. And I think that there's so much context missing from this chart, so much information missing from this chart.
Well, and that I saw a lot of that too.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my thing on that is, it's funny if you look at the propositions that were in a lot of states, regardless of what they were for. If you look at the propositions,
New York's was absolutely ridiculous. Just to get that out there.
Right, exactly. But when you look at the propositions, in terms of the votes on the propositions that were pro-Democrat, let's say, or liberal, the numbers were higher than her votes. So
people sat out the top.
So people pretty much went in and said, I'm voting for the proposition, yes, because I want those rights enshrined in my state. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. But they said, I want that, but I don't want that. It's like you went to a buffet and you had, it's not that, people still went and chose the steak. Like they went and got the thing that they wanted, but they said, I just don't want that. I'm not picking that. I'm not putting that on my plate. And again, I think it's going to be a long time for them for the people that do this stuff, not me, not Twitter, not you, to actually do research, like statistical stuff, do the interviews, talk to people, and find out what really happened. Because everybody's got it. Everybody's armchair quarterback today and yesterday, and it's like Tuesday night, and everybody thinks they know, and they don't know. And, so in my opinion, there's a lot more going on here than it was because she was this or because she was that or because he is this or because he's that. I think it's going to be a lot more, and I think a lot of people are just fed up again, and a lot of people are. Because did you vote at all?
Nope.
So you don't even vote for the down ballot stuff?
Nope.
Okay, so there's a lot of people that didn't vote, like you, and I'm not. And again, I think not voting is important as voting in some sense, because if you don't have faith in the system, why vote? It's like I don't buy NFL gear because I don't like the NFL. I'll buy a T-shirt that says "Go Bills," but I'm not buying anything where the NFL is going to make any money off of it. I'll buy it from the local guy. This is "Go Bills," but I'm not buying anything that's got the NFL logo on it because I don't like the NFL. So I vote with my dollars by buying other things, and I think I vote down ballot. Like my son didn't vote for president. Neither one of my sons voted for a president, but they went and voted for all the down ballot stuff and the propositions.
Can I talk to that really quick? Because I was pretty vocal for the last 6 months about me not voting. I honestly, in retrospect, I had no idea until after the fact that proposition in New York was even on the ballot. If I knew that it was prior to the election, I may have gone out and voted just for that. I didn't even know that was a thing until the results started coming in and they were talking about it.
Right.
And people were pissed. And I'm like, what is this? I live in the state of New York. I didn't hear anything about that.
Right.
And we've been piped into, we've been doing pods on politics. So we've been piped in.
And then shame on if you're pro or against that, both parties, shame on you for not promoting it, whatever your opinion is, because like you didn't hear Republicans saying, hey, you got to come out and vote against this. You didn't hear Democrats saying, come out and vote for it. I know because I follow this shit. Like I look at the ballot like 3 weeks ahead of time to see what's on it. Like I like to, because to be honest, like some of the things I don't even like some of the things that are local shit. I don't know who to vote for. Like so I have to kind of like see, well, who's that? And then I do my research and I decide on like the judge or the county guy. I mean, the county guy, but like in general, I like try to look at the down ballot stuff and decide if I'm voting for Gillibrand or the other person. Like I kind of pay attention to that. So I knew it was on there, but I was like, how come? And I went into the house and I said to the rest of my family, I have 2 sons and a wife, and I'm like, did anybody know about the proposition? And nobody else in my house. And my son is incredibly informed, and he didn't know about the proposition. So it was kind of like, and that's again, that just shows the parties just like the party system is broken for me, and it's been broken for a long time. And that's kind of, I think that's ultimately what is going to be the downfall for the Democrats at the moment is the expectation of what they call their party, but they don't really like take care of their customers.
The best thing that happened in this election, in my opinion, is the fact that Trump is going to win the popular vote. Because for me, I know I'm on an island on the conservative side to feel this way and believe this, and all of my conservative friends and family do not feel the same way as me about this specific topic. I think the fact that we have electoral college and these votes in every state, and the fact that if I am a conservative in New York State, that my vote literally for the top literally is pointless. Because he still carried New York by 15, or Harris won New York by 15%. I mean, It wasn't even close.
Right.
Even if I voted and I got 10 or 20 or 100 of me's to go vote.
But without a popular vote, that vote makes more of a difference.
If it's a popular vote, then my vote actually really, truly does. It's very disingenuous when they're doing these voting campaigns and they're saying every vote counts, because it's not true.
Here's my problem.
Not true at all.
Here's my problem with the popular vote. And this is, I've argued this for years. And this is when I was a teacher, I used to get into conversations about people with the popular vote. And then, you hear the thing, well, because of Bob Beck and the thing and the farmers and the blah, 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 the reason why we have the popular vote. And if you don't know, Google it. I'm not going to waste time talking about that. But what I said is the problem is if you're a swing state, everybody spends all their money, and not just during the election, the rest of the year to like butter up that state. So they're getting parks and infrastructure and in FEMA dollars and everything in the world, because you know what? The government guys are like, hey, we better take care of that state, because they're the ones that really matter whether I'm going to have this job in 2 years. So, but a state like New York, California, Texas isn't getting shit. It doesn't get nothing except for the guy who's powerful, like, in his whatever, he'll get his park money or she'll get her whatever money for this and that. But in general, the states that aren't swing states, they get less. Like Ohio isn't a swing state anymore. Hasn't been a swing state for the last 2-3 terms. Not since really, I think the Bush election has Ohio really been a swing state. And it's, to me, it's funny. I'd love to see like the federal dollars. I bet you $100 that the money that's going, comparatively, take away inflation, that's going to Ohio is probably below, because no one's going to put money into those states because they don't need to. People are spending money to make sure Wisconsin gets shit, Michigan stuff, Arizona gets stuff, which is kind of like, one of the bad things about the popular vote, in my opinion.
You think it's bad? What do you mean?
What I don't like about the electoral college is because it shifts focus, so everybody doesn't get an equal piece of the pie.
I think the electoral,
and the same thing happens in New York State from a big city versus a small city. We don't have a popular vote versus electoral college. We know where the dollars go because of the influence. Like Niagara County doesn't get as much money as Erie County. Want to know why? Because we don't have as much population. So they put money into the larger areas, and that's again, it's the same reason why like New York, Niagara County doesn't get the kind of stuff that it needs, because they see like Erie County is more important. So it's the same thing that happens with swing states.
I think that if you did away with the electoral college, which had its place in the 1800s and the 1900s when everything was concentrated in the cities, so it was obvious. Like you had states in the Midwest that had like no people in them, and then you had New York and L.A. and whatever, maybe not in the 1800s per se, but like you had big East Coast cities where the concentration of people was large. People have moved out of cities. I mean, cities are still large, but there's a lot of people spread out across the country now.
Well, you have suburbs and stuff too, and then like in you sub-suburbs don't necessarily, the way some cities are located, Like, think of Washington, D.C. Like, obviously people live in Washington, D.C., but there's a lot of powerful people that don't live in Washington. They live in Virginia and Baltimore, and they live like outside of D.C. So those votes get spread out, and you can get a train and you get remote workers. So, yeah, like a lot of the reason why we put in the Electoral College is dated.
Way dated. Yeah. Way dated.
But I mean, I agree with you. The fact that like everybody's like, yeah, but like, it's always the thing like, well, but I always joke about that. Maybe they should do the Super Bowl that way. Whichever quarterback has the most total yards is the one who should win, not the one who has the highest score. Like that's the same thing. Like no, like but if you're a Trump guy, or you're anti electoral college, you're like, okay, in this case, he won the states. And he also won. He had the most votes.
The problem is Democrats have been pushing for this.
Yeah, no, they can't use that. Right.
Well, no, I'm saying
they don't have an argument on that anymore.
No, they've
obviously.
been pushing it for so long. I think they really still do want it. And Republicans have pushed back because we haven't won a popular vote in 20 years. So why would we ever want to go that route?
Yeah, now the Republicans are now it's not as important.
Well,
right.
I'm saying like now that we did that, now the Democrats could say you just won the popular vote.
So we don't need it anymore.
Why are we doing this electoral college nonsense? Why don't we? Because I would love to see if you did away with the electoral college and everybody's vote truly did matter. Like your vote, your one vote is counted. It doesn't matter who wins in your area. You go to it would be very. There could be a whole campaign that this country could run about going out and voting, and I think your vote matters.
And I think
it doesn't matter where you live,
and more people would vote. So
100%, I would vote.
Yeah,
I would definitely.
Yeah,
I would definitely make it. I would pick the less. I would have picked the lesser of two evils. I would have went out there and said, I feel like I'm participating. I feel like if I wanted to vote Harris, would vote Harris. If I wanted to vote Trump, I'd feel like that vote would matter in the grand scheme of tabulating. Or even if I'm voting for Harris, I might be a Harris supporter and say, you know what, I got shit to do on Tuesday. She's going to win it anyways. I'm not going to go vote.
And all of this stuff is the problem with all of this stuff is the campaign cycle is ridiculous. Like, I feel like people are running like, if someone's going to start running for president in like 3 weeks, like I swear to God, like it's gotten ridiculous. They need to, and this is exclusive to our country. If you look at like England and other countries that have similar systems to ours, they don't have like a 3-year election cycle. They don't. Like, because you know what? Go do your freaking job for 2 years and then we'll decide if we like you or not. They need to trim down. They need to have, like primaries in a different way. Thank God, like the Democrats got rid of the super delegates and all that crap like that they tried a couple of years ago. That's how they got Hillary nominated the first time. We need a lot of reform for those types of things and let people just do their jobs and not focus on the reelection crap, because we're going to already be hearing about it in I think because Trump's can't run again, so they're going to be like, well, who's taking over? And that's going to be the big discussion about with the Democrats. Like maybe we said this, I think off the air, that, Biden should have pulled out a long time ago, and they should have had a prime. And I think that is going to turn out to be the biggest reason why people didn't vote.
Yeah, it's actually, if you look at the even though he won all the swing states, it was still well within the margin of error. It was some were 1 or 2%. It was very close. It wasn't. He didn't blow her out in, I think, most of them, if not all. It was very close in all of them. So, 1 or 2% here or there, a big difference could have been made if the Democrats would have done a democratic process, ironically enough, and had a primary and allowed people to choose. And like I said off the air with you, even if Harris ended up being the candidate, she would have had 2 years of campaigning under her belt. Right. She would have been super confident. And I think what will go down...
You said, and to clarify, because you said off the air and you didn't say it on the air, is that after the 22 midterms, Biden should have announced at that point that he wasn't running, so they could have had a true... and in my house, that was a thing. Like, my sons didn't like her for various reasons, not because she's a woman or black or any of that crap, but because they just didn't like her. But more importantly, my younger son, who's not political at all, was like, they didn't have a primary. That's bullshit. He's like maybe there's a better guy out there. Like, I want you to go out and actively show me, like, interview. Like, he's a sports guy. So he doesn't want to just hire. He hates when they hire a guy from within. He hates that. Like, no, go look for a candidate. Have an interview. Have that guy interview and have 3 other guys interview or gals for whatever job it is, and then decide who's the best one. Just because you were in the House doesn't mean you should get the job. Like, no, go and see. Maybe that guy will work harder if he realizes, oh my God, I've got to show in an interview why I'm going to get the job. What am I going to do differently than the guy we just fired? And again, my son's not political at all, but he equates to the sports management franchise. And if you think about, like, was his reason he didn't vote for her, because he thinks that was wrong. He felt like it was rigged or stolen or whatever. He didn't say those words, but I think that is going to turn out to be a big thing.
They made so many mistakes on the Democratic side. Number one, I think, because I said this before, I truly believe that Obama would be a better president today than he was in 2008, because he was just too young. He wasn't ready. He was too
He didn't understand how
impressionable.
politics worked in Washington.
So I think that the Democrats were not forward-thinking when they picked the vice president. They were trying to satisfy a base. They should have picked someone else that had more experience, that, God forbid, this scenario that actually played out was going to play out, that they gave themselves a better opportunity.
Well,
to
maybe
hold
they,
the
after,
office.
when now in hindsight, and again, I'm not going to do Sunday morning quarterback or Monday morning quarterback, like maybe they should have picked the governor of Pennsylvania, because, and here's the only reason I'll say that they should have.
For
the vice president, yeah, they should have done him, because maybe they would have won Pennsylvania. Not that that mattered, but the biggest problem for me is, and whether you like Tim Walz or not, they picked him. He came out and had a really couple good weeks, and then all of a sudden he was like, you never saw him again. Like, it was almost like I think he went rogue. I think he decided to do some things, and the campaign was like, yo, settle down. Like, we're not doing that.
J.D. Vance was such a better VP pick than, it wasn't even, like, when they debated, again, we talked about this on the podcast. I like both of them, as, like, they seem like good human beings in that respect. Yeah. But on a political stage and a confident stage and an understanding of, like, his environment and policies, J.D. Vance wiped the floor with him. Yeah. And he did it in a very respectful manner.
That was the one thing that people did like, was that and the funny thing about it is I don't think that the vice president thing doesn't shape a damn thing.
It doesn't.
But it was nice to see, you know, I'm not a big J.D. Vance fan and whatever, but, like, I'm really hoping that, like, that once this guy's gone and now that the other guy's gone, and I just hoping like we'd stop, like, the ugly stuff is just, is just ridiculous. And it's just like, come in to talk about policy. Like, give me a reason to vote for you. I don't want to hear about this and that and all that crap. Like, do that on your X and your Twitter and all that stuff. I'm fine with it. But once we get into, like, the campaigns and you're speaking, like, don't say vote for me because I'm not them. Show me policy, show me things you want. I know it's boring, but, like, I don't know. Like, I think you guys better have a better, moving forward, these presidents have to have more of a plan what they're going to do, like, because it's ridiculous.
Any other president, I would say that in this scenario, any other president would be grooming his VP to run in 4 years. I don't think that's the case in this scenario, only because there's so many variables that could happen in 4 years. If Vance goes rogue on him on anything and doesn't stay loyal on something, even if, I think. So
do you think that they'll actually you? I don't, because Trump doesn't like anybody. He doesn't feel. I don't think he really likes people. He uses people.
I think he likes people that give him some sort of.
Yeah,
I don't know if advantage is the word, but you have to be. It has to be a relationship where it
I
doesn't have
don't
to be reciprocal, but he has to be getting something.
I don't think Trump or Biden give a crap about their vice president. I don't think Biden cared at all about really involving Harris in things unless it was convenient for him.
He didn't do her any favors after the fact either, and I don't think.
And I don't think Trump's going to do anything for Vance.
To be fair, I don't think Harris had anything to do with him stepping down. It wasn't her decision.
No.
She just. I don't think.
No, it was all his own missteps.
He should have. Well, even that. I don't think she was in on the play call to make that move.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
So I
don't
don't think he did her any favors. He was a big.
It'll
baby
be
about
interesting
situation
because obviously Trump can't run again. It'll be interesting what the Republicans do. If they'll make the same mistake the Democrats just said and say, well, Vance is going to be the nominee. If they do that,
No, I don't think.
I'm
I
just
think
saying,
they'll
like-
primary. Because look at what they did with.
Right. because there's a lot of young guys and gals in that party, whether it's Nikki Haley or whoever, they're going to be like, no, I want to run. Like, just because he's a VP doesn't mean it'll be interesting, because it will be more like Vance will get his opportunity. And I think that's all anybody wants. And if he turns out to be the better candidate, he wins the primaries, great.
I was just thinking it's crazy. I actually, the last Republican VP to run was Bush. Bush won.
That won.
No, the first Bush.
Yes.
Because Cheney didn't run for Bush.
No, Cheney
2.
didn't. Gore lost.
Gore was Democrat.
Yeah, but Gore lost, though.
But I'm saying a Republican.
Oh, for Republicans.
On the Republican
yeah.
side, the last Republican vice president that ran where the incumbent couldn't run was 1992.
Yeah.
It's been 32 years.
Well, Biden
So-
was going to run, but then
he-
he
but
stepped
they
down so they could
primaried.
give Hillary her chance.
He's still primary though.
Yeah.
He's still so I would assume that they'll primary that Vance will be the front runner most likely if things go well.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of variables depending on policies that Trump does well or doesn't do well, because that's all going to affect Vance.
If Trump does well, then Vance will have suddenly been part of everything. If he doesn't do well, then Vance will have had nothing to do with it, because that's what they do all the time. Democrats do this too. So it'll be harder for Vance to get the nomination if things aren't going well. Let's put it that way.
The other thing, too, that you have to take into consideration, the reason why I brought the point up is because, again, Trump only cares about you when you're doing something for him.
Exactly.
So what happens to the MAGA base when they no longer can do anything for him?
Right.
Does he get the MAGA base to back Vance or anybody, even if
Right.
like it goes Mike Pence again and he decides that he doesn't like Vance or whatever? Does he just abandon the MAGA? Because the MAGA base is, I mean, we said it last week, like this was a make or break for MAGA. It was either going to die or live on, and obviously MAGA is living on. So
the funny thing for
what happens
MAGA
with MAGA
is
here?
that they're going to be they're not going to be square behind anybody at all. Like, I think even if unless Trump comes out and anoints him, and it's just not Trump to do
I
that.
don't see it either.
It's not like if it was his kid, great. Oh, she's great or he's great. Nominate my son. Like, that would be different. But I think even that would be split. Like, my son said this yesterday. The Democrats have to find their version of Trump. They have to find this like non-politician person that everybody seems to like,
they
that
had
you
it
can
in
get a core.
2016, but it was a politician. But they had a Trump-like figure in 2016.
that?
It was Bernie.
Yes. And it's too late,
But
obviously,
it's
for Bernie.
the train is
And there's still
far
a lot
left
of
the
people.
station
Yeah,
on
there's a
Bernie,
lot of people that didn't vote that time for the same reason,
Yeah.
because they said they felt Bernie got screwed because of
but
the superdelegates.
Bernie's movement started
Yeah.
before Bernie's was the MAGA
Yeah.
movement.
They need
without
their
MAGA.
they need their like celebrity rock star type person, and it's not people. What's his face? Like, it's not him. It's not Mayor Pete, by the way. Like, don't do that, Democrats, because you're probably already thinking he's your next guy, and he's not. It was like the guy that lost in Texas that suddenly was a rock star, and the girl that lost for the governor of Georgia was a rock star, and like you haven't heard their names in like 2 years.
They need somebody like
You need some out. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say. I'm going to just throw a guy out there because, like, he's
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban's. They need their Mark Cuban. Like, they need a
the
guy.
problem with Mark Cuban.
I'm not
is-
saying it should be
No,
Mark Cuban, but
he
you
would've
get where
been-
I'm going with
He
this.
would have been perfect if he
Yeah.
didn't go all in on Harris the way he did
Yeah.
and run so hard for her. He should have just like backed her and just like stayed off to the side. He made himself look stupid.
I
Too many-
wish they
he
always.
he
Yeah.
went to a point where it looked personal when it should never, like, it looked like it
Yeah.
was a personal thing between him and Trump.
Yeah, and it
should
probably
never be,
is.
It probably is, but you should never make it that. It should be, if you're running, it's about the country. It's not about you. And I think he lost points by doing it. The other person that I think that could potentially run would be The Rock, because it's been tossed around.
He's the problem with The Rock is, and this is my problem with The Rock.
There's a lot of problems with The Rock.
Yeah,
but
is he's not popular anymore. Like, he's not, like, his movies aren't doing well. He's not
could change in 4 years though.
People are starting to like it, like guys like The Rock, there's fatigue factor. And I think as a celebrity goes, I think celebrityism, because look at the fact that celebrities in general, like right or left, those endorsements don't make a difference anymore. Like, we don't look at movie stars and TV stars and music stars the way we used to. They did not fire anyone up. I think endorsements are something that, like, I would almost not want endorsements anymore, like, from celebrities, because I feel like it's just you gain, you lose almost as much as you gain.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not voting differently. I might vote differently specifically if Beyonce shows up. Like, I'm not voting for someone because Beyonce says I should, because I hate Beyonce. Like, so, and there's a lot of hate for certain celebrities because, and it's not the shut up and sing thing. Go up and say all you want in your concerts and do that stuff. But, like, I just don't think, like, being in the camp, being like an actor, unless you show me that you really know your shit. Like, if you come out and you can you can talk the talk and debate me or just anybody on what you know about the government and policy, great, then go ahead and endorse. But if you're like, I just like the way they dress, like, or something like that, you know, that's my problem. Like, I think celebrity endorsements is annoying.
Yeah. We can kind of tie a bow on that and get a little bit back into some. No, it's fine. I wanted to talk a lot about the election because we spent so much time leading up talking about.
So let me ask you this question, because this was something that was in my house. It was a big deal that came up. Like, okay, so you talked a little bit about it better, but do you think there will be, and when will you think we will know? Like, if crypto, Bitcoin, there is going to be a governmental acknowledgement of it at the point that we're going to, like, we're going to start, like, really important, like, making this part of our government.
Senator, I have this up here now. I was going to kind of jump into this.
Right.
Senator Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming. She's been an enormous supporter of Bitcoin. And she tweeted election night, actually election, it would be morning because it was like a little after midnight. We are now going to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So Loomis has been extremely pro Bitcoin, pro crypto. She drafted bills that have not yet reached a president's desk, but they're there. They've been drafted. And the United States government is a top either 5, but definitely top 10 holder in the world of Bitcoin. It has 200 and something thousand that they took from Silk Road, which is another thing I want to talk about too, the Silk Road thing that ties into all this. So I believe with Elon, who's semi-crypto, Vivek, with Loomis, and there's a bunch of people in the Bitcoin community that Trump has been talking with, and they've had his ear, that I hope, because I don't necessarily trust everything that he says or believe everything that he says, but there's definitely a much bigger opportunity with Trump than there was potentially with Harris. But what I do believe is that Bitcoin will not get sold. I think under a Democratic administration, they probably would have auctioned it like they've done in the past. And I think now it's probably safe to say that the United States government will continue to be a holder of that Bitcoin. And that's a good thing, because we're about to be in a bull run where the price is about to go parabolic and they're about to see a price appreciation that they probably don't even contemplate or fathom that they're going to see, which will just further solidify the stance of them not selling that. Second thing, Trump made, which is even more important than what he decides to do with the government's Bitcoin and all that stuff, he made promises to the Bitcoin community in regards to Ross Ulbricht, who is a icon in our community. He's to brush it up for the viewers. He is the founder of Silk Road. Silk Road existed in the very early days of Bitcoin. It was a website that was on the dark web. You could buy anything from drugs to guns to hitmen to all kinds of things. Ross was the facilitator of the website. He didn't sell drugs. He didn't sell guns. He didn't sell any of those things. He just created the website. And he got one of the harshest sentences ever for something where you're just basically facilitating things and you're not actually, outside of like electronic crime, you're not actually committing. I mean, Bernie Madoff got 20 years and this dude got a life sentence for this. I mean, people rape children and get less sentences. So
yeah, I mean, I know more about that than I realized, because I've kind of seen some of that, and yeah, like And that's a whole nother thing, the justice system. So yeah, I'm hoping that there are some time served. Let's go. Let this person out. And
he made a promise that in his first 90 days or first 100 days.
How long has he been in?
2013.
It's a long time.
He's been in for 12 years.
And again,
almost
so
12 years.
There should be something. I don't remember if there was any type of restitution or not. But you need to some of these things are ridiculous. So
yeah. So hopefully we can.
Bernie
get him
Madoff
out.
20 years is the bargain, but
and he died in jail.
Yeah.
So it was
and that's most of those guys in the 90s that were the the Enron guys and the Adelphia guys. Those guys, most of them died in prison. Where they were released at the very end just so they could go see their families and then died.
Yep. The other thing too, unfortunately, in Massachusetts, we couldn't get our victory over Elizabeth Warren. It was called way early. It wasn't even really that close. But John Deaton put up a good fight. He tried, but Elizabeth Warren won that race. But Sherrod Brown in Ohio, who was the main architect and enforcer of Operation Choke Point 2.0 with Senator Warren, lost his seat. So we got one of them out. And now that we got Trump in and we got a red House and a red Senate, which we can talk about if that's good or bad in a different conversation. But Elizabeth Warren, although she kept her seat, is probably going to be extremely neutered and won't be relied on in this administration for anything in regards to finance. So she's just going to be a spouting talking head with no power now. So that'll be a good thing, in my opinion. I just can't believe Massachusetts keeps voting that fraud into office. It's just beyond my realm of understanding. Next thing we can talk about, this was tweeted yesterday. So as of yesterday's market, MicroStrategy broke $50 billion in market cap. They are now worth more than the Ford Motor Company. Ford has lost 60% of its market cap since 2022 and holds $26 billion in cash, about 65% of its total market cap. The melting ice cube of cash holdings eroded by inflation year after year. This is what Michael Saylor feared for his company when he decided to buy Bitcoin in 2020. MicroStrategy's market cap is up 45x since that point in time. So we talk about this week in and week out. We talk about MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor and his decision to put Bitcoin on his balance sheet. And you look at a company like Ford, which has been around for over 100 years, and they're just holding cash on their balance sheet, and they're just eroding market cap. And they're down 60% in their market cap of their company in the same time period as what Michael Saylor has done. So it's safe to say, because we have time and math, to say that if Ford would have done the same thing that MicroStrategy did, Ford would be worth much more than MicroStrategy at this point, because they had a higher starting point than Michael Saylor did when he first bought his 500 million of Bitcoin 4 years ago. So that's the power that these companies hold in their hands with these cash balance sheets that they could put into Bitcoin and do what MicroStrategy did, and they're just deciding not to, which is just mind-boggling to me. And the next thing in regards to MicroStrategy specifically is that MicroStrategy at their call has pledged that they will spend $10 billion buying Bitcoin next year, which is more than the total amount it has spent since it first started buying Bitcoin in 2020. And then there's a chart where MicroStrategy has a $42 billion Bitcoin plan from now until 2027. So this year they've spent $3.9 billion on Bitcoin. And in 2025, they've allocated to spend $5 billion in the first half and $5 billion in the second half, for a total of $10 billion. In 2026, they plan to spend $7 billion in quarter one, $7 billion in quarter two, for a total of $14 billion. And then in 2027, they plan to spend $9 billion in quarter one and $9 billion in quarter two, for a total of $18 billion, for a total of $42 billion from 2025 to 2027 going into Bitcoin. So if we use history as a guide and we take a look at extrapolating the data of what Bitcoin has done over any 4-year period, and you go from 2024 to 2027, 2028, and they're going to do 42 billion of present day dollars into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin continues to do the price appreciation, it's probably pretty safe to say that sometime towards the end of this decade, MicroStrategy could potentially be the largest corporation in America, if not the world, just by employing this strategy. And we are talking nothing about the actual products that MicroStrategy actually produces. We're just talking about Bitcoin. That's just mind-boggling to me, and it's just wild that here we are this far from their first purchase, and we have this whole 4 years of data to look at what this one company has done. And they are a darling on Wall Street, and they're about to enter the S&P 500. So it's not like people don't know that they exist. It's not like people don't know what they're doing. So it's one of two things. Either people are doing stuff behind the scenes that we haven't heard of yet, which is highly unlikely because they have to make, quarterly filing offerings of what they're doing with their finances, or they're just that stubborn and refuse to adapt to this new way of money, which is just, it's just wild. It's wild to me. I can't believe by now we haven't seen like Amazon or Apple. Maybe because those companies are just blue chips and they just have like the entitlement of, they just feel like we've done things great already. Why would we do anything different? I'm more surprised of those like maybe top 500 companies that are lower down the food chain that are like, hey, what's this thing that we need to do, this next big hit that can, bring this return for our shareholders?
Like if you compare three of the companies you talked about, Amazon, Ford, and Apple. Amazon did great in the pandemic. Apple did incredible in the pandemic. Ford did terrible in the pandemic. Plus they have that like big, huge loan that they took. They took a loan because of mandates to increase it.
If it wasn't for the federal government, they wouldn't exist.
They have taken less loans than the other.
No, I know, but
other corporations.
I'm saying if you go all the way back to 2008,
true.
If the government would have done what they should have done,
and
not done that extreme bailout and started printing money,
right,
Ford should no longer exist.
Yeah,
so
and that's why Michigan's a swing state.
They're on borrowed time.
But they borrowed all that money in like 2013 or 12. I looked it up the other day. I was talking because Ford came up a while back, and about some other conversation I had. But that's the difference between like, so Amazon and Apple, they don't really need to do. They're making a ton of money right now, so like they're not looking at if your company's doing well and you're making money hand over fist, and you're able to build all these facilities because you're getting government money and local money to build these facilities like they're building here around the corner from us. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be the companies like you said that are maybe not that top 10, 20 in that top. That
Ford would be the perfect.
Ford's the perfect example
company.
of it. Yes.
And Ford sells a product, right? A car where, especially in the type of economy that we're in now, the bottom line, it's very the margins are getting squeezed.
Right.
So if you look at MicroStrategy, like I'm sitting here as a Michael Saylor fan, as a MicroStrategy fan, and I couldn't take 10 minutes to explain what that company does.
Why wouldn't you look at different ways? Because it's kind of like you've got to change your model. Like you've got to change. Those companies with the changing environment have to change their model. And that, it's like the McDonald's thing. Like McDonald's doesn't make money because they sell hamburgers. They make money because they own land,
real estate.
And I love that in that movie. I was never thought of that. I didn't know that, and I learned so much from that movie. And I realized, and that's almost the same way in some sense that Ford and these other types of companies have to look at what they're doing because you may have a bad year in car sales. The model may be a piece of junk and people don't like it. So you have to figure out, okay, well, how do we ensure that we're going to make money this year? And what do you have to do to diversify? That's why I like certain companies like Honda, because they don't just make cars. They make a ton of other things too that, so they're never just, we only make cars. They make, motorcycles, and they make engines, and they make lawnmowers, and they make so many different. Honda's a great company that has diversified. So but I think that's kind of what some of these companies that are just a one-hit wonders, not one-hit wonder, that's the wrong term, but like they got this one way of making money, and they have to kind of start thinking about other ways to balance that spreadsheet.
There's a lot of examples because I'm on Bitcoin Twitter, so I get them into my algorithm. Yeah. There's a ton of examples of small businesses. Like I follow a couple guys. One is a dentist, one is a primary care doctor, and one guy owns like I think a body shop or something like that.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're doing the strategy of adding their balance sheet funds into Bitcoin on their company's balance sheet, and they're growing their businesses based on that more than the dental business they're doing, more than the primary care patients they're seeing, more than the cars that they're fixing. Like those things will go in ebbs and flows as you're building your business, but putting the Bitcoin on like think about these guys that I've been following. If they did it, if they've been in business for over a year and they've employed that strategy, Bitcoin's up like 300% since we started doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they started their business in October I'm sorry, since we started filming in here.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I meant. Yeah. It's up since we started the podcast in October of 23. It's up even more than that. But neither here nor there. So their business could be doing whatever they're doing there, but if they're putting their balance sheet into Bitcoin, they're up extreme. Like if you run a business and you're getting 10, 15, 20% a year, you're doing really well. If you're in like triple digits of returns on a year-over-year basis, your business is growing exponentially. So these smaller scale businesses are employing these strategies. I just don't understand why more of the mid to larger cap companies like a Ford, like Dollar General, like any of these stores that are or these businesses that their margins are so thin just because of the economy that we're in, and you're looking for ways to, because they're publicly traded companies that have shareholders that they have to be accountable for. Anybody that owns MicroStrategy is like making money hand over fist. It's just like Nvidia, MicroStrategy. These are stocks that are just like, that came out of nowhere from pandemic till now in the last 4 years. Why wouldn't you want to be one of those companies that's been established that's like, hey, we need this new page turner that's going to put us back as one of the hot stocks on Wall Street? I just don't understand why these companies aren't taking this more serious and doing it, especially if you have younger. I'm sure these companies have younger people that are working in their executive offices that know about crypto and Bitcoin are like, hey, why don't you take a look at this? You know, a 20-something or a 30-something that has seen what Bitcoin has done cycle after cycle after cycle. Why wouldn't they say, hey, why don't you allocate 5% of our reserves instead of going crazy like MicroStrategy? Why don't you just take, let's say we have 10 million on our balance sheet. Why don't we take $1 million or 500 and just see what it does and see how it works? And then like that's what MicroStrategy did. Like he did a small 500 million at first and then saw how that worked and then just kept going and going and going and going. Like why? Right. I just don't get what these companies are thinking and why they're not trying to employ a strategy that's obviously working for somebody else. It's like, why are you trying to invent the wheel when the wheel already exists?
And I think they're just, I think in general, companies, whether it's Ford or Sears, Blockbuster, big companies,
Radio Shack,
that didn't know how to change. Some things you can't change. I don't know how Blockbuster, unless they'd gotten into streaming and tried to be a Netflix, that's the only way Blockbuster would have survived because that median was dying. So, but I mean, but the fact that if, you have to figure out, that's kind of what these companies are supposed to do. So, I mean, you think about, companies like Sears and even newspapers in general, they just didn't know how to switch from a physical piece of paper coming to your house to the internet and figure out how to do it. And the ones that were able to do it still have a voice. They have found that way of changing how they do things, and they're never going to be once they once were. But like, to me, it was funny, like the Wall Street Journal, for example, and they do well, that's fine. But like some of those types of news, like type of publication, Time Magazine, let's say, why didn't you just create like a cable channel? Like, why didn't you go to a streaming thing and say, you know what, we're going to actually we're going to try to hit the medium because that's where everybody's going. Because look at the number of people that are on YouTube and X and that are doing their daily broadcasts, and whether it's Twitch or Discord. There's so many places out there, and none of those places have a presence, and a lot of them don't exist anymore, or they don't have. They're certainly not what they once were. And that's, to me, the same reason why I think these companies aren't investing, because they are stuck in this is the way we do things. And even when the young guy comes in, they're like, no, listen, we've been this is the way we've done things for 1,000 years, and that's and that guy leaves and goes and starts his own company probably, and he's doing great, and that's because he gets right. I mean, if you look at the startups that are coming up, most of whenever you see a guy in a startup or a gal in a startup, what do they all say? Well, I worked in corporation crap for a few years, and I realized I couldn't. Blah, blah, blah. So you know what? I went and I met some people in that job, and we started our own company, and we're doing this now. And some of them fail, but at least they're trying to do. And those companies are the ones that are doing what you're talking about.
Yeah, probably a good point.
Because corporations, school systems, government, we are very resistant to change because we've always done it this way.
Another data point from yesterday, while Bitcoin and crypto are flying and stock markets are flying, BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF yesterday did 4.1 billion in trading volume, the biggest day ever for ETFs. I'm very interested to see how high we go this cycle. As we sit getting ready to wrap this podcast up now, we're trading right around 76,000. Bitcoin dominance right now is 58.9%. Total market cap 2.55 trillion. Believe it or not, we are still not at the all-time high for market cap of crypto. Bitcoin. This part of this is a little bit different than prior parts, which speaks to a lot of different things that we don't have time to get into necessarily today, but we could talk about hopefully next week when Troy will be joining us back again on the podcast, being the crypto side. Altcoins are taking a hell of a long time catching up to this party than they have in the past. And there's a lot of theories that come with that maybe this is the last cycle that altcoins will perform as they've performed in the past. There's some thoughts that I have about that, obviously, and Troy can speak to that being the crypto guy next week, but it's definitely being shown that the market most definitely prefers Bitcoin over, as they should, all other crypto coins. Outside of BNB, I think that's what Troy said, no other coins have hit an all-time high yet. And Bitcoin has hit, so far this bull run, this is the third time that we've hit an all-time high so far, and we're not even in 2025 yet, and none of the other coins outside of BNB, which is an exchange coin, have done so. I mean, ETH isn't even at 3,000, and that was a $4,500 coin last cycle. So, I mean, Dogecoin is sitting at 19 cents, and I believe that when Elon went on SNL, that was like 70 cents or 70-something cents a coin. So, I don't know what this means for the shit coins, but what it definitely means for the market is saying that Bitcoin is the alpha, and Bitcoin is where you should be parking your safe dollars as it continues to perform. And I'm excited to see what that means in the next 6 to 12 months, when we typically really see the biggest moves and the biggest gains, and how far over six figures this thing is going to shoot up to, because it's definitely going to be doing that soon. We'll end on that. Again, next week we should have Troy back in studio talking crypto. And if you don't already follow me, underneath the bottom of the screen, you see my X, Troy's X, and click like, subscribe, follow, all the good stuff. Until next time, don't trust, verify. Peace.